What is the address of your emergency? Your service 911.
911, what's the address of the emergency?
With the rest of the country watching, the California Office of Emergency Services, or Cal OES, announced it is leading the nation with Next Generation 911.
This is the first system like this in the nation.
During the past year and a half, our investigative unit has been digging into what critics call the money pit that is Next Gen 911.
911, what's the address of the emergency?
We've been hearing from inside sources and real-life dispatchers who say there have been constant project delays and serious public safety concerns.
We never had so many failures.
But California is moving forward. Next Gen 911, state leaders say, is too big to fail. From the Bay Area, we're driving 2.5 hours east to rural Tuolumne County. Early signs of trouble started here. Cal OES tabbed the Tuolumne County Sheriff's Office as the first location to go live with its new next-gen network in 2021, planning to eventually hook up the rest of California.
Yeah.
Leanne Castleberry and Terry Crook were some of the first dispatchers to use the system.
What was that like for both of you?
It's not ready.
Disastrous.
Things went wrong right away, they say.
We get calls that had no information. We didn't know where they were coming from. Abandoned calls. Just it rang and then
Be gone. Yes.
be gone.
Their network was connected like never before, but not in a good way. Documents obtained by the investigative unit through public records requests show Tuolumne County received calls from across the state, including the Bay Area, overwhelming their small staff and delaying help. And it's not just Tuolumne County. This past June, Desert Hot Springs PD in the Coachella Valley reported call transfer problems through their next-gen 911 system.
911, what's the address of your emergency?
You're listening to a real-life call where life-saving help was delayed.
My boyfriend needs an ambulance. Okay, let me put you through the paramedics. Stay on line for me, okay?
Nearly a minute goes by. The caller is left hanging on the line.
Ma'am, for some reason our transfer is not working. What does he need a paramedic for?
Not being able to transfer calls is one problem. Not getting calls at all is worse. Back in Tuolumne, this 2022 memo shows a 911 manager tell a sheriff's captain in her 12 years at the Tuolumne County Sheriff's Department. She recalled 2 or 3 complete failures of the old legacy 911 system. Since February, the new system has experienced 6 failures. In one case, callers were unable to call 911 for roughly 12 hours. At one point, their call center was averaging a failure a month.
I felt like we were the test agency, and they were testing our lives.
After some 25 years each as dispatchers, Leanne and Terry retired last December.
Did this play a role in that?
It was a tipping point, but I can't see myself sitting footing there and feeling that again.
Cal OES said all of California would be on the new next-gen network by 2021. 3 years later, the agency says only a handful are taking calls on the new system. The state blames COVID delays and unexpected tech issues. NextGen was supposed to cost about $300 million, but the state has now spent nearly $500 million and counting.
Next-gen 911 was just a dream.
That's the voice of Cal OES's Budge Courier on the agency's podcast. He's been the man behind the vision and the execution plan for California NextGen 911 since day one. In August, Cal OES parted ways with Courier. He declined an interview with us, saying he's proud of his work.
With the change in leadership, we have an opportunity to reassess and reset.
Amy Palmer is Cal OES's Crisis Communications Deputy Director.
Certainly we're aware of some concerns about contractor performance. We take that very seriously, and that is one of the areas that we will remedy.
Some would call this a failure and are concerned that the execution of this project has been an irresponsible use of Californians' money.
We disagree strongly that the NextGen 911 project is not on track. No state has embarked on a project as ambitious as California's project, one that will have the resiliency it will have, one that will help us prevent outages, one that will help save lives.
Do you believe the state's new 911 network is safe for the rest of California right now?
We won't deploy it until we're sure it is.
But the state did deploy in Tuolumne County and other areas across California that have documented pages of issues. During this 911 call of an active heart attack, Tuolumne was unable to transfer to Merced County. In this memo, a man called to report his garage and surrounding vegetation was on fire. He called 911 5 times and couldn't get through.
What do you want to say to families impacted by these problems?
Number one, I would want to learn a lot more about exactly why that call was rerouted.
Do you feel like the state put people's lives at risk in Tuolumne County by rolling out this new program without working out some of the issues?
Yes, potentially.
I don't think they realize the issues.
From Tuolumne County, where the state first went live with its new state-of-the-art 911 network.
Sheriff's Office 911.
And where we uncovered pages of records from the Sheriff's Department documenting public safety concerns impacting real-life 911 calls.
They were testing our lives.
We're driving south to speak with a man who's asked to remain anonymous because he's working on California Next Generation 911 right now.
I wouldn't have called you if it was just something minor, but there's major issues here.
He doesn't work with the state or one of the companies hired to create our next-gen system. He's with another telecommunications company and has experience setting up other similar systems nationwide.
Some would say, hey, you're representing a vendor who's just bitter because they didn't get the contract.
Not at all. We lose contracts all the time. Public safety is not about, making money. Lives are at stake, property's at stake.
In August 2019, Cal OES agreed to divvy up a maximum of $420 million among 4 separate companies to create NextGen. Each company would be responsible for implementing the system in its own region of the state, with a 5th overarching prime region. Each region would be interconnected and could provide backup to another 911 call center during a catastrophe, with the prime network as another backup.
Which on paper is a really, really good idea.
Has anyone else in the U.S. done it this way?
No. So the 4 companies that were picked, they're talking at each other, but they're not really talking to each other. They're all in their little silo, planning their activities and planning their networks.
When networks don't communicate with each other, what's at stake?
Misrouted calls that don't route at all, busy signals, dropped calls.
And that's what dispatchers quickly experienced in Tuolumne County.
Immediately, yeah, we'd get calls that had no information. We didn't know where they were coming from.
So far, only a handful of the 440 plus emergency call centers across California are taking 911 calls through the new system. Though the State Office of Emergency Services couldn't tell us exactly how many, it is still trying to ramp up deployment. Which is why this insider and these recently retired dispatchers agreed to speak with us. If what happens in Tuolumne happens in big cities like San Francisco or LA,
that could be catastrophic. It would basically freeze all emergency response. I think what went wrong was that they hired inexperienced companies.
The 4 companies Cal OES signed contracts with are Atos, CenturyLink, now called Lumen, Synergim, and NGA. We reached out to all of them. Atos and Synergim did not respond. Lumen said, we take this responsibility seriously and are committed to getting it right.
It's where it's got to be.
Don Ferguson, the CEO of NGA, agreed to sit down with us.
California, they were the first, they were the leader in designing it, so they set the bar.
We asked Ferguson if NGA has ever taken on a project the size of the regions his company is responsible for.
Remember, NextGen starts new, so there is not something that compares to Los Angeles.
We also asked about the insider's claim that different regions aren't communicating with each other properly.
As you move into the project, you discover things that otherwise you have a plan, but you have certain considerations that you just, well, that's new.
The 2 contracts that NGA signed with Cal OES total more than $108 million, and it's been 5 years. Both contracts actually expired just this past August, and the system is far from fully up and running.
I would agree that it's not finished, that it is far from being finished, I would say is not accurate. There is an accelerated deployment based on the hard work and effort of Desert Hot Springs and Tuolumne County Sheriff.
It is a a project that cannot fail.
Amy Palmer is with Cal OES, the agency ultimately responsible for California's Next Gen project and contractor oversight.
I think some of the barriers, again, would have befallen any of the contractors.
So what are state leaders actually doing about it? When we asked, Palmer did not have specifics, but we confirmed Cal OES parted ways with the man behind the project, Budge Courier, this past August. As of now, there is no word when Californians can expect NextGen to be up and running across the state, let alone when it'll be safe.
We won't deploy it until we're sure it is.
I reached out because there's too much going on that's not right. Somebody needs to look into it.
Why has it taken so long for these concerns to come to light? I've spoken with people working at 911 centers throughout the state who tell me they are hesitant to speak out because the agency in question, the state, oversees a lot of their funding.
I'd like to nominate Chief White.
A change right off the bat.
The motion has passed.
Martinez Police Chief Andrew White voted in as chairman of the State 911 Advisory Board days after speaking with our investigative unit about being blindsided by serious public safety concerns quietly plaguing California's new next generation 911 network. White is filling the seat of Budge Courier, the former state official in charge of the project. As we reported, the California Office of Emergency Services, or Cal OES, parted ways with Courier, something White says the board only learned about through our reporting.
There was information that came out that certainly as an advisory board member that I hadn't been aware of.
What is the address of your emergency?
NextGen 911 is California's new network to bring our landline-based technology into the internet age. Our investigations last week revealed years' worth of reports of misrouted calls, lost calls, outages, and delays in life-saving responses from some of the first dispatch centers to use the system. White is part of the board created to ensure trust between the public, 911 dispatchers, and Cal OES. But he says they've been kept in the dark about the system's failures leading to those safety problems. We asked if the rest of the board felt the same.
Were board members here aware of serious public safety concerns from Cal OES before our news reports last week? And if not, is that a problem?
The first to respond, Rodeo Hercules Fire Protection Chief Rebecca Ramirez.
Speaking for myself, I think it caused me to go back and communicate with some of our dispatch centers. I feel like there hasn't been enough information on the totality of the system and how it's working.
Mark Chase with the California National Emergency Numbers Association, representing dispatchers, also weighed in.
The public safety cannot be compromised. Transparency with the public is paramount.
911, what's the address of your emergency?
Then a major announcement. Cal OES has stopped all deployment of Next Generation 911 until it figures out the scope of the problems we uncovered. It's also working with attorneys to figure out how to hold contractors accountable for performance. Regarding transparency, White questioned whether Cal OES has been reporting every 911 failure to the board.
So if a center has issues, for example, transferring calls, and they experience repeated issues with that, but sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, that's not going to show up necessarily on these slides.
I would say that's correct. Paul, would you concur? Yes.
We asked Cal OES about a major 911 outage reported by the Tuolumne County Sheriff's Office in April 2022, where callers were unable to call 911 for roughly 12 hours. Board meeting minutes from the following month made no mention of it.
Why is that? And is that also a problem?
We appreciate the question and just know that as is reflected in the next meeting that's happening, that we are making it a priority to identify any such concerns.
He's talking about the special meeting board members called for February, hoping then the state will respond to concerns about transparency and public safety. Amid these issues, one message came across clearly. Next Generation 911 is new technology our aging system needs, and there's urgency to get it right.
911, what's the address of the emergency?
But it can't come at the expense of reliability or trust of the people who call 911 and the dispatchers who rely upon the system to save lives. If this board was misled in any way, whether by intentionally, by negligence, by poor communication, or any combination thereof, that needs to come to light.